This story happened to me this year, and before that, I thought such things could only happen in a movie or some kind of fantasy book. But what happened, happened. Every person in this life has a hobby or some activity that brings them immense pleasure. Some can't imagine their life without fishing, others without hunting. But I love mushroom picking. There's a certain thrill to it, a desire to gather as many as possible as quickly as possible so you can come home and show off your haul. The excitement is always there, whether you're alone or with a partner. Some might say, "What's so exciting about that? You just walk around and look for mushrooms." But that's what people say who have never truly gone mushroom picking. Imagine an early morning. You're standing with your partner at the edge of the forest, about to go in. All the way there, you both tell each other that you don't really need the mushrooms, that you're just here for the fresh air and the beauty of nature. But in reality, each of you has a very clear goal: to gather more mushrooms than the other. All that talk about not needing mushrooms is just for show. Why does it happen this way? I don't know. Maybe people are just built to want to be the best at everything. Then it begins. You enter the forest and start picking mushrooms. And for a while, you forget about your competitive spirit. But when you meet up again, the first question is always, "So did you get a lot?" Only after that do you compare what kinds and how many you found. And it was during one of these mushroom trips that this story happened. It was the beginning of September. The weather was getting worse, nights were colder, and dark storm clouds were appearing more often. Summer was over, though I barely noticed it had begun. My cursed job was to blame. I feel like I just live from year to year, waiting for summer, and only in the fall do I realize it's already gone. This fact pushed me to go mushroom picking with my friend. Everything was as usual. We agreed to go together on the weekend to a forest 30 miles from the city. The forest, by the way, is pretty serious. If you get lost there, you're as good as gone. There are a lot of dark stories about that forest. According to some, a lot of people have disappeared there, some by their own hand, some with a little help. So there are plenty of tales about the forest being full of ghosts and other chilling horrors. To be fair, there are a lot of accidents on the stretch of road bordering the forest, and some people seriously claim they crashed because a woman suddenly appeared in front of them. I never saw anything like that myself, but I have seen fog so thick you could scoop it with a mug. You don't drive through it. You creep along, hoping not to hit anyone or anything. Others say the forest is a favorite spot for witches, and it's big enough to host a whole coven without anyone finding out. In general, there are lots of stories, but personally, I've only ever encountered the fog, though I've sometimes left the forest with only a few hours of daylight left. Early morning, just after 6, the forest is incredibly quiet. Bombardiro, Crocodilo, and I are sitting in the car because I set the departure time too early. It's not even light enough to look for mushrooms yet, so we have to wait. We discuss our plans. We've entered from this spot many times and know this part of the forest well. There's a small ravine about 4 miles ahead, stretching through the whole forest, and we agreed to meet there at 11 a.m. It's almost impossible to miss it, no matter which way you go. We entered the forest, went our separate ways, and started searching for mushrooms. Of course, I wanted to pick as many as possible as the season was ending, and this was probably my first and last trip this year. Mushrooms were hard to find, but I managed a decent haul. I reached the ravine around 10:40, looked around, and waited. The signal was great, so I could call Bombardiro, Crocodilo, any time, but I decided to just wait. After 10 minutes, I saw him about 60 feet away, and he came over. "So, Tralalero, did you get a lot?" "Not really," I replied. "And you?" "Same here. Ready to head home?" "Yeah, let's go," he said. As we walked back, we talked about this and that. After about 15 minutes, we saw an old man. He didn't just appear. It was like he materialized out of thin air. He was sitting under a tree about 60 feet away, rummaging through his basket. I called out to him, and he waved us over. "Do you have a light?" he asked, showing us a pack of cigarettes. "Sure," said Bombardiro, Crocodilo, handing him a lighter. "Thanks. I left home in a hurry and forgot my matches." "Here, take these," he said, offering us some blackberries from his basket. Bombardiro, Crocodilo, took the berries. "You want some?" he asked, looking at me. "Yeah, why not?" I said, taking a couple. The berries were delicious, but there were only a few. Suddenly, I asked, "Hey, isn't blackberry season over by now?" "Who knows?" he replied. "Maybe he has a bush near his house, or it's a special kind." "That old guy's weird. Appeared out of nowhere carrying berries and lives somewhere around here." "Relax, Tralalero. He's just an old man who forgot his lighter and brought some berries for the road." But I couldn't shake the feeling. "You know, maybe that was a forest spirit," I said. "Come on, Tralalero. You're scaring me. It was just a regular old man." But I was sure I was right. I heard that forest spirits can turn into people and wait by the road to give you berries. If you eat them, you might never leave the forest. Bombardiro, Crocodilo, laughed. "I'd believe you, but forest spirits don't exist. Calm down." We walked for hours, but the forest never seemed to end. We called for help, and they said they'd start searching for us soon. Unfortunately, we only had basic cell phones. No navigation. If we had a smartphone, we could have used GPS. Maybe a forest spirit can trick a person, but not a navigator. "Let's just sit here," I said. "Why?" "Maybe we'll find our way out. But if not, at least we have a signal to call for help." "Fine, let's wait a bit," Bombardiro, Crocodilo agreed. We waited for a long time. Dusk was ending and night was coming. We started arguing about what to do. He wanted to keep moving, but I insisted that rescue would find us faster if we stayed put. We had no water or food, sure. A survival expert could last a week, but we were just regular guys, used to comfort. Bombardiro, Crocodilo, finally said, "Fine, I'm leaving," and walked off. I watched the fire expecting a reaction, but he just left. Soon it would be completely dark. It was creepy sitting alone in a tiny patch of light in the dark forest. My intuition screamed at me to put out the fire and sneak away. I kept hearing footsteps around the campfire. At first, I thought it was Bombardiro, Crocodilo, playing a joke, so I called him, but he answered, and the footsteps didn't stop. I realized it was someone else. I decided to put out the fire and walk. When you're moving, your mind is occupied, and it's less scary. I tried to walk quietly, but the noise was incredible. Anyone who's walked in a forest at night knows you can't see a thing and constantly bump into bushes. After 40 minutes, I saw a light ahead, a window with a light on. That meant food, water, and a way home. I hurried toward it. I didn't knock, just opened the door. It was strange. A cabin with just one big room, candles on the walls, and a huge table in the center, covered with a white tablecloth. No one was there, so I sat and waited. The longer I waited, the more uneasy I felt. Maybe this was where something sinister happened at night. I decided to hide behind the stove. If normal people came, I'd explain myself. If not, I'd stay hidden. It was already too late to leave. I heard a sharp male scream nearby and hid behind the stove. From there, I could see the whole room, but stayed in the shadows. After 5 minutes, the owners came in. They weren't quite human, small, devilish creatures, and an old woman who bossed them around. They laughed and muttered, sitting around the table. The old woman said, "We have guests tonight." I realized I was doomed. She went to the trapdoor in the floor and called out. 2 devils dragged Bombardiro, Crocodilo into the room. The old woman said, "Here's our guest. The forest spirit decided to treat us tonight. Bombardiro, Crocodilo, tried to scream through his gag. They laid him on the table, and I couldn't watch anymore. Piece by piece, they cut him up and served him. Horrified, I passed out. When I woke up, I was still behind the stove. I peeked out. Nothing. The room was empty, just sunlight coming through the window. I headed for the door, but as I opened it, I heard the trap door creak behind me. I turned and saw dozens of eyes staring from the darkness. Someone said, "Come back and visit, kid." I screamed and ran, thinking only one thing. They knew I was behind the stove. They wanted me to see it all.